Sprite Castle. Sprite Castle. Sprite Castle.
Mr. Rob O'Hara.
Sprite Castle.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Sprite Castle. Alright, I can't hear anything. Alright, that's better. I can't do a whole episode with a Boba Fett helmet on my head, so instead I'll wear my Boba Fett hat here. Greetings and welcome to another episode of SpriteCastle.com. In case you haven't guessed, on today's show, I will be doing Star Wars, a classic arcade game originally made by Parker Brothers. Did all the ports for Star Wars, at least the early ports. It was an Atari arcade classic game that used vector graphics, which we're going to see could be a problem for some of our home systems. But anyway, there were two versions of Star Wars. The original Star Wars game made for the Commodore 64. The first was made by Parker Brothers, which was made in 1983. Parker Brothers ported Star Wars to pretty much everything they could get their hands on, starting with the Atari 2600 all the way up to most of the 8-bit computers and 8-bit consoles. Even 16-bit systems saw ports of it. And then later on, Domark made another version of Star Wars in 1988, I believe, which was released in the U.S. in 89 by Broderbund. So we're going to go ahead and start with the 1983 version. As I've told you before, I am cheating on Sprite Castle and using an emulator. So let's go ahead and bring up the 1983 version of Parker Brothers' version of Star Wars. Now, the most difficult thing about this version of Star Wars, or Parker Brothers, is that to try and capture the feeling of having a yoke joystick, they have reversed the up and down movements on the joystick. So anytime you see the little crosshairs here going up, I'm pushing down. And anytime you see them moving down, I'm pushing up. And so pretty much you have to reverse the way that your brain works. Obviously, this is a control scheme that makes sense if you have a flight, yoke, like what's on the arcade game. It doesn't make a lot of sense when you have a joystick. I mean, you can kind of get into, a rhythm of moving down instead of up and up instead of down. But anytime that you try to do something quickly to react to a fireball coming at you or to hit a TIE fighter, you'll find that you almost always move in the wrong direction. At least I do. A couple other things to notice. The big obvious difference in this version versus the arcade version is that the arcade version uses vector technology. It uses vector graphics, which are all straight lines that are drawn on a screen. You're probably familiar with vector graphics if you've ever played games like Tempest is a very popular vector game. Star Wars is another one of the most popular vector games. Okay, I've made it to the second stage here, which is we are flying down the Death Star trench. We are avoiding fireballs. Now, in the arcade game, there were things here that you could be shooting, but those are all pretty much gone in this version. All your only job here is to avoid these fireballs, and then your job at the end of it is to blow up the Death Star by putting some lasers there in the exhaust port. That red flashing you see on the screen there was the destruction of the Death Star, and as I joked about in another episode, stormtroopers and contractors everywhere are busy right now building another Death Star, which you are going to be expected to blow up again here very shortly. So, gone are the wire graphics, the vector graphics from the arcade game. Those have been replaced by pretty much non-changing sprites of TIE fighters. You see the fireballs that come near you are colored. This version is pretty generous when it comes to your targeting. Also, you're a TIE fighter in this version. I'm about to lose all my shields. Now, if you're not familiar with the way that Star Wars works, is you start with a shield level of 9. Each time a fireball hits you, your shield goes down a level, and eventually when your shield gets to 0, we can presume that Luke did not accomplish his mission and was blown to smithereens. He'll have a nice reunion with Biggs and Dak and all his other buddies that didn't quite make it to the final Death Star explosion. So anyway, this is pretty much Star Wars from Parker Brothers, released in 1983 for the Commodore 64. It's not a bad game. The controls are a little wonky. Like I said, you have that up-down thing going on. And as compared to the arcade version, which has vector graphics, obviously the Commodore 64 is not able to do true vector graphics. Instead, it does sprites. So you get faster gameplay with a trade-off of graphical quality. Now let's take a look at the 1988 version released by Domar, which I happen to have right here as well. This was created by Domar and released in the US by Broderbund. I want you to see the loading screen on this because you're going to see something a lot different right off the bat.
We'll be with you.
Now we have a title screen. We have a voice. We have Obi-Wan saying the Force will be with you, just like in the arcade version. And you can see that this says written by Vector Graphics. A little bit better music now. This is 5 years later, so instead of the single voice version of the Star Wars theme we just heard, we have a little bit better. So, here's what we're going to see on this version. Alright, right off the bat we can pick, just like in the arcade, we can pick what level we want to start. Is easy, medium, or hard. I'm going to give you a recommendation, say start with easy. Okay, now, holy cow, we have vector graphics. We don't have real vector graphics, but we have simulated vector graphics. As you can see, the ships now are turning and flying around, and this graphically looks much closer to the arcade version. Those graphics come with a trade-off, and that trade-off is this version is sluggish. It's probably difficult to tell from the video here. Also, I have to reverse my brain back now, because this version, the joystick, when you press up, the crossbars go up, and when you press down, it goes down, which is the opposite of Parker Brothers' version, of which when you press down, it goes up, and when you press up, it goes down. Now, I am trying to shoot all these fireballs here, but when all those fireballs get on the screen, what happens is the game slows down immensely, and I am not able to fire as quickly as fireballs are coming in. So, you will find yourself, like right now, I have my little targeting system on the fireballs, and I'm pressing the fire button, and nothing is happening. And so what I find myself on this version is getting frustrated because I'm trying to shoot things, but everything is just a little bit behind. Alright, so now we have... I'm actually doing pretty good. I usually don't do this good. And that's... I would say on the other version, when I'm focusing, I could, kill the Death Star 3 or 4 times. And right now I'm trying to shoot these fireballs. Darth Vader makes an appearance every now and then in these games. You'll see him as a different colored TIE fighter or whatever. He's worth more points. Now we're in the Death Star, and what you will see... Oh, again, I have to remember down is up. I mean, down is down instead of down being up. Is you have these little gun turrets on the side that you can shoot, these little red things you could shoot. You're supposed to avoid more fireballs. The fireballs have more color in this version. Everything is a lot more colorful. But everything is just a little slower. So you have to sometimes anticipate your moves. In the other version, it's pretty easy as long as you can remember which direction you're going to shoot the fireballs. In this version, sometimes it's easier to just dodge them. So, not real vector graphics. Commodore is not able to do that. Also, you can see the Death Star level is much longer in this version. So, now, just like the arcade, well, let's not say that. Let's avoid the phrase just like the arcade, but you can see I blew up the Death Star. It actually showed the Death Star, showed the explosion. You get your bonus. And now we are on to the next level. In both versions, as you advance through the game, TIE fighters move faster, they move more erratically. And in this version, I'm sure there are people that are better at this game than I am, but this version, for me, becomes unplayable very quickly because when so many things get on the screen, it just starts slowing everything down. It just makes it to where the game itself prevents you from reacting quickly enough to shoot all the fireballs or shoot everything that's on the screen. Okay. Now I have, just for giggles here, let's just go start on hard. On some of the levels, we'll just start you off with a fireball in the face, which is apparently proper etiquette when you're attacking a Death Star. But as you can see on this, first of all, the TIE fighters are just all over the place, moving back and forth. Even when you get a lock on them, they'll move sometimes. Because when they shoot fireballs, what's happening is the game slows down, so even though I'm firing when I'm on, there's Darth Vader right there. So even when I'm firing, because there are fireballs, by the time the lasers get there, they've already moved, and so it doesn't. The game doesn't register that we have. This version is obviously a lot more eye-pleasing, and I think overall, I think people, I don't know, it depends on what you like in your gameplay. I like this version better, even though, like I said, it kind of becomes unplayable if you advance too much. Unplayable is a relative term, I guess. It just becomes much more difficult. These versions, obviously this is a game that was designed to play with a flight yoke in the arcade, so this version, I think Parker Brothers made a bad move when they made the other version and they inverted the joystick controls. It's just not, it doesn't feel natural with a normal joystick. This version feels more right when you're moving things around. You'll see this is the other version, or the other level here, where we were flying on the surface of the Death Star, and there are top of towers. There are also these little things you can blow up here. I didn't get very far on that, but when you get to the end of this level, then you do end up in the Death Star trench. So, anyway, 2 versions of Star Wars available for the Commodore 64. Both fun, both not bad. The Parker Brothers one is 5 years earlier, so I forgive it for being a little bit more simplistic. The Domark one, this version that was released by Broderbund in the U.S., a little bit more advanced, a little bit better graphics, but the trade-off is the slowdown that you get a little bit of gameplay. So, anyway, 2 versions of Star Wars for Commodore 64. Empire Strikes Back was also released for the Commodore 64 and Return of the Jedi, so we may see those in future versions of Sprite Castle. If you enjoy Sprite Castle, you can check out all the episodes at spritecastle.com. If you have suggestions, you can leave them on the Sprite Castle Facebook page, or you can email them to me directly at spritecastle@gmail.com. If you like other retro podcasts and video casts, be sure to check out throwbacknetwork.net. It's our new little network where we're putting all of our retro-themed shows together, so be sure to check that out as well. May the Force be with you, and I'll see you next time.